What if your best operator already decided to leave and you have no idea? Most leaders think keeping people is about pay or perks or hiring faster. Gallup says a manager drives about 75% of voluntary turnover. And in our own national study, 35% of workers open to manufacturing had never had a single one-on-one development conversation with their manager. And you can't retain people if you don't really talk to them. I'm Trevor Blondeel. I've spent my career on the factory floor, and I read my guest's book cover to cover on a flight from Toronto to Vancouver. Today, Darcy Eikenberg is going to show us how you keep your best people by helping them rescue the job they already have, starting with the one area where you can actually control. Welcome to the show, Darcy.
Oh, thank you so much, Trevor. I'm so glad to be here. And thanks for reading my book. I hope it was a good airplane companion.
It was great, right? It was kind of like the right length for it. It was an easy read. And then it just applies to manufacturing, because one of the slogans that we have is leverage the resources you already have. And I like to say the best people are the people already inside your four walls, because manufacturing plants usually have four walls. So when you, as an executive coach and author of Red Cape Rescue, save your career without leaving your job. Well, that's kind of the essence of manufacturing in North America. You know, we already have forecasts of shortage of people. So let's not lose the ones we have, right?
Yeah, with the pace of retirements, with the change that are happening on factory floors, the recruiting new people, recruiting younger people, keeping the people that are already doing a great work for you that you can help adapt. It's the biggest challenge for manufacturing leadership right now. And the challenges aren't getting easier. There's no magic pill. There's no magic wand that says, oh, if I buy that technology or I hire that consulting group, we'll have the answer. There's so much that's in the simple blocking and tackling. It's almost like everything old is becoming new again. We've forgotten some of the basics about how human beings need to work, want to work, and how we collectively get good results, for our people and our business.
I had a YouTube short that someone made a comment on, and it was about using AI in recruiting, right, to kind of smooth out the process. And I got to reply to the comment because it was something along the lines of, yeah, and we lose the whole human connection, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
We got to balance that technology with, like, hey, we're human. It's employee retention. It's trying to understand why do good people leave. And you've really studied this, right? This has been your life's work of I think your work ties in so strong right now because North America is talking about keeping manufacturing here.
Right.
And then bringing more manufacturing, but then, like, who's going to do it? So then we got these Gen Xers like myself starting to leave the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got not a lot of Gen Z or Gen Zs deciding to come to the industry. So I think that's where you kind of come in and say, okay, how do we keep the people we have so that those people can become advocates for bringing more people into manufacturing?
Yeah, we have to recognize that there is a competitive difference that we can create with our people and with the investment. And I don't mean throwing more money at things, but people naturally take time. And there's, especially in North America, this is different in some countries where people don't have a choice. The cultures don't allow them to have, I believe we all have independent thought and things we want for our families and ourselves and our heart. There's not the permission in some places to be able to speak that, to be able to actually manifest that self. But that makes, our work here a little more complex because people aren't all the same. Every factory worker isn't the same. Every leader isn't the same. So some of the things that I'll often teach to leaders and leaders of leaders is how do we really customize the conversations, but still in a way that can scale, that can teach basic principles and put them in practice without it feeling like, oh my gosh, this is going to take forever and I'll never get, quote unquote, my work done. The truth is, that is the work.
That is the work. Everything else is a distraction.
That is the work.
Yeah.
That is the work.
And so I look at your work from a couple different angles, and I see it from, like, the leader and the leader's leader. But I think what we don't talk about enough is, like, the professional in manufacturing or the team member in manufacturing that's turning the floor. And I like it when authors or experts can simplify their work, right? And when I think of you, I will always think of like, what's in my control? It's what I think, it's what I say, and it's what I do. I can remember those three. So what do I think about the situation? So that's going to determine what I'm going to say. And then what I say might determine what I'm going to do. So that's kind of like, I really like that framework. And, in your experience with manufacturing, how have you seen that help, and where'd you come with that?
Yeah. Well, the truth is that it's a natural part of our biology to feel like we want to control things because that registers, for certainty. Our brain is always looking for certainty, for structure, because the brain is just trying, the little lizard part of our brain is just trying to keep us safe. And, most of us are never taught that that's just biology. That's biology that's sending you those little messages that like, don't go there, don't say that, pull back. But then we're trying so hard to control everything else that we don't always realize that the only three things we control are what we say, what we do, and what we think. And these are active choices that we can make. So if a situation is not what we want it to be, I've talked to too many people who spend too much time, like, well, when the merger is over, or when the new equipment goes in, or when my boss retires, instead of saying, what is in my control right now? And it sometimes can be as simple as I have a story going on about, let's say, my boss. I have a story going on about what she wants or what's, like who she is.
Mm,
Maybe I want to revisit that story. And is it actually easier for me to believe something else or just to ask myself, what else could this mean? When she's grumpy in the morning and, barks at the whole team and we're doing a great job, maybe that's not about us. Maybe that's about something happening at home or somebody else barking at her first. So there is a piece where when things bother us, the whole crux of the book is also have started seeing people when things aren't going the way they want them to think they only have a couple of choices. Well, they really only have the choice to leave. And that's either find another job, retire, drop out of the workforce altogether, which is happening at a just crazy number
yeah.
for young males and even middle-aged males in our, in our continent. People who have something to contribute. We need them in the workforce. We need them in our world. But we can take control over those three things. And most people advocate control and wait for the world to change. You can't control that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I read a stat this morning. I'm afraid to say it because I might get it wrong, but the number of people between the ages of 18 and 65 in the United States that are not in the active workforce, I thought it was like close to like high millions. I forget the number, but it was like,
It's a very high number. Yeah, your stats probably not far off. I think, the JOLTS data, some of the, the data that gets collected, and then some of the informal data of, of people applying for, for benefits without other types of disability or anything else going on. Just the fact of people giving up. There's been quite a bit of research on, a vague discontent with Gen Z around work. And I think a big part of that is connecting it to purpose. Because,
yes.
A manufacturing plant isn't just to sell products. I mean, there's a purpose that plays in its town, in its industry, in the innovation for, what they do. But often we're so busy, we're not seeking the purpose, or as a leader, we're not talking about the bigger things. We're talking about the stuff and not about what the stuff leads us to, why it matters. And if it didn't matter, it wouldn't be happening. So we just have to connect those dots for people to make them feel that they matter because they do.
Yeah. That made me think of, so we talk about the Gen Z, and the leaders in manufacturing get so much put on them. It's like a constant drumbeat. It's a drumbeat of just demand. And then next hour, like, what'd you make last hour? So it just, like, it's relentless. It doesn't stop. And then I think that's why it's important that we have to kind of, like you said, what is our primary role? Yes, we have to do payroll. Yes, we have to do vacation accrual. Yes, we have to do this investigation. Yes, it just goes on and on. But at the end of the day, there's only one person that's going to help have those conversations with the people that report to you, that the people that you serve. And how do you, just step back and just kind of say, like, what's going on here? And like, that's where you and our work kind of crosses a little bit. For me, it's a lot about results come from deeper conversations. That's just really the whole core message of my book. And a lot of what your book talks about is, what, even how you ask for things. That reminds me of Bob Berg from The Go-Giver. He wrote The Go-Giver. He was a former guest on the podcast. And one thing that I listened to one of his videos, he talked about, like, if you're going to ask for a referral, make it specific. And when you read your book, you talk about, like, if you've got an ask, don't say, like, how do I get promoted around here? And, instead you could just be a little more specific of saying, hey, I'm looking to get promoted into quality. And the inspection side, I see that CNC room, but I don't really know what goes on in there. I'm looking for a specific mentor that could kind of maybe help me in measurements, or is there a course I can take? So I thought that advice was really good, Darcy.
Yeah. We've done people a disservice by trying to teach them in the past maybe 10, 15 years that, shorter is better, get to the point, bottom line on top, because what we miss when we're thinking we have to do that is we're missing setting the context and deepening the relationship. And so this doesn't mean babble on for hours. And it certainly does not mean an email that's this long that,
no emails.
No. Actually, I think there is a lot of email blindness going on now. And so this is why conversation is so much better than presentation today. Whether that's in public, whether that's in email, whether that's a long text. But the power of human to human voice doesn't even have to be face, but sometimes screens screen out emotion and truth. But to be able to have that specific ask, here's the situation because of this, I'm looking for this, is there some way you can help me here? Is there something? And you're also not asking someone to solve the problem for you. The best asks are, first of all, you thinking ahead and doing the kind of the research, and like you just mentioned with I see the folks in the quality department there. Is there a mentor? Do you have ideas for me? What are one or two steps I could take to get to that promotion in the next 3 months? I also like for when it's things like money or promotion and you have a true need to time bind it. Because to your point earlier, your leaders, your managers, they're currently doing lots of things. And it's easy, even for the good people, to get lost because, like, what you're asking for, you haven't made it seem important. You're like, oh, well, yeah, if we have it in the budget or whatever, yeah, I think I'm ready for a raise. It's like, what would you need to see from me in the next 3 months so to be able to move to senior supervisor at the start of the year? So specificity is helpful. I think it's also helpful. A lot of times we don't know what exactly we want to ask for. It's like, is it money? Is it flexibility? Is it, I just want more recognition, but I feel funny asking for recognition? Sometimes getting super specific helps us know what's the real ask. Because sometimes when I work through this with clients, sometimes we discover it's not an ask at all. It's actually, so here's what I'm going to do next. And, are there any red flags that you see?
Yeah. Don't ask, you're not really asking for permission. You're just saying, hey, here's what I'm going to do next. And then that allows, your leader or the person you're working with or your coworker to say, well, not exactly that. How about this? Because, like, if you can bring up your ideas and someone else can help critique them, right? To maybe just kind of take that 5 degrees different path of, like, yeah, a mentor would be good, but there's this course that maybe you should take first. Okay.
Yeah. Or we were just talking in the other meeting about how quality was behind, let's do this other thing instead. Or, it's more of the refining, because I think too often, this is what I call the battle of the brain. We get caught up in our own thoughts and we don't ask for help soon enough. We don't have a conversation soon enough. We wait until we think it's all perfect or set instead of involving others in the journey. And when others are part of the journey, like when you're talking to your leader about, hey, I would like to expand, what I can do here. Here's some initial ideas. What might you think for me? You're going to hear if your assumption might be off or if there's something new that you never suspected was happening. Be truthful. What I think this merger is going to mean is that quality is going to actually move to Pennsylvania. I don't know if that's something good to know.
We got to have that conversation to find it out, right?
Yeah, right. Right. Or
Yeah.
at least to get, a little, to get out of our heads and to get other data around it. And again, an ask doesn't always have to be, I am asking for something. It could be asking for clarity. It could be asking for more context around, hey, I know that you had said in the stand up that this goal was the most important goal right now. What's driving that compared to 3 months ago, we were focused on this other goal, and sometimes your leader may have a clear answer that they just didn't communicate well, or they forgot about that. They're like, this is the one we're doing now. So
And what are your thoughts too? Because I talk to people in manufacturing about like just booking specific time for these development conversations, right? Because I talk to them every day. I'm like, yeah, but if you just can book a time to talk just about their development, right?
Yeah.
Just so you can just kind of get that out. You're wondering why good people leave.
Yeah.
Well, if you have those conversations, you can say, hey, if you were to leave right now, what would be the reason, right? And then you can kind of dive in and say, well, we actually offer that here because if we want to keep our best people, then let's have that conversation.
Yeah. There's actually a term for that. It's, the stay conversation. And
Oh,
it is a separate setup than your day to day, because chances are if a movie crew was following you around and documenting every conversation you were having, the I talk to you every day would be, hey, be sure you check on that over there. How's Sandy? Where's Bob today? Don't forget the this. Don't forget. It's not. So, Trevor, how are you? Like, what's going on for you?
I'm
Because
good. Yeah. Can you do this right after, this?
yeah, I think it's as much we have to create a separate space and almost a sacred space for it, as much for ourselves. And this is why I often will recommend make this a lunch or a coffee or a before work, something that works with your person, but that you both know ahead of time, this is a different conversation. This is a
Mhm.
step back and just big picture, how is it going? Not just for you in the work, but also for you as a human being, because
Mhm.
people have things that go on in their lives that they choose not to bring to work, and they don't have to tell you that. But if you are not creating the space for it, to be, yeah, well, I felt a little off because, Joey's going to college and, we're empty nesters right now. And that's a lot
Yeah.
different for us. That's good data because that tells you where that person might be in their life.
Mhm.
And you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be saying, oh, well, here's how we'll solve that problem. It's like, no, you're just seeking information.
Hey, if you're listening and you don't think you have time for one more conversation, well, that's exactly the thing we're talking about. Darcy just called it the stay conversation, and it's different from the ones you're already having. If you want somewhere to start, grab my list of 10 questions. Ask your leadership, drive some engagement. It's free at manufacturinggreatness.com/subscribe. Now back to Darcy. Yeah, manufacturing, we like to solve problems, right? Oh, let me fix that for you. Well, that's
Yeah.
not really
Well,
what it's learning.
I think that's the temptation. And I think that's sometimes why, managers resist these kind of conversations, is because they think anything brought to them, they are going to feel obligated to answer or be responsible for. And I think you can set it up from the get go and say, this is just a big picture check in of how you are. There's no actions from it. There's no, like I'm in listen mode. I love it when I have clients who will use this. I'm in listen mode for this conversation. That also triggers me if I'm starting the conversation to shut up, which is hard sometimes for people to do, especially if someone's a little reticent to talk or to say how it's going. Silence creates the vacuum for people to say more than just, it's fine, all good.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can just kind of, it's amazing what I've learned about people. If the more I've gotten comfortable with silence, right? It's like, we do need to process information and, just giving ourselves a little bit of space. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. Well, now the more I think that through. So yeah, so this all helps with manufacturing team leadership when they're wondering, how do you keep your best people?
Right.
And there's another parallel that manufacturing, and I've got stories in my book about this, is that we see a problem, we want to attack it, right? Because we got to keep that line moving. So like we go to a station and then we're trying to, adjust tooling or whatever. And then we're still getting bad parts being made, but we're not looking upstream. And the whole concept is in lean manufacturing and a lot of our lingo around Kaizens and problem solving is that, you got to kind of like see there's a problem beneath the problem. And then, so you retell a parable about saving bodies out of a river. So, and then tell the listeners that one and then how that ties into your work.
Yeah. So this is really the heart of Dan Heath's book, Upstream, which came out a few years ago, but it really resonates with me and resonates with a lot of the, companies that I'm working with, of where the story goes that a couple people were walking along a river, and then all of a sudden there's a child in the river, child screaming. And so they both jump in and, they're pulling the child out. And while they're pulling him up to shore, there's another child in the river. And they're like, oh my gosh, let's go back. And then they just gotten that kid almost to safety. And they're like, there's another one. And so one of the people who were passersby doesn't go back in the water, and he starts to walk away. And his friend says, what are you doing? We've got to save these kids that are coming down. It's like, I'm going to walk upstream and figure out why these kids are falling in the water. And, the truth is we often feel like the fire in front of us is so important we can't let it go. And we're not going to let kids drown in the water. But the truth is, if we didn't take the time to just go upstream, like, what's the problem behind the problem? What's why is this happening? I have a client who manufactures technology, remote controls, TV, things for telecommunications, electronics. And they were talking about having multiple requests for this one piece of product. And so what would happen is that every time a customer would call, then they would just send out that piece of that product. Well, they started to get those calls 5 times a day. We needed this. We needed this. And finally, somebody on the factory floor, who was actually in shipping, it's like, what's going on here that all of a sudden we need more of these? And because that wasn't their job, quote unquote, so to speak, to see that pattern. Their job was get the thing out to the customer request. But it was a 30-second conversation to say to the customer, hey, this is the 10th time, or the volume has accelerated on you asking for these. What's happening here? And what that led to was a conversation around a new client that the client had gained, about an acceleration of their sales team. And they're like, oh, great, good data. Let's step back. And now we're going to adjust our delivery and our line to be able to meet that. But the customer hadn't really thought to tell them, because the problem they were trying to solve is somebody needed this thing. And all it took was one person to step back. And you can bet that person also felt like, hey, I matter here. I saw something and I took the minute to speak up. And that can make so much difference when we let people know we want them to do that.
Yeah, you talk about saying the hard conversation, right? Like just kind of creating that environment to just, that for that shipping person to be able to kind of chime in and, just become better connected on, okay, yeah, it's okay to have that conversation of coming with a little more curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it was a problem that affected many people, but it wasn't necessarily a problem that person owned, but it was a problem that the company owned. It was a problem that their client, the external customer owned. So helping people know that, hey, we want you to think bigger. We want you to bring your whole brain to work, not just the thing you do day after day. Like, you're a full human being here, and you will have thoughts and ideas. We can't execute every one. And there's not time to sit around and noodle on 1,000 different things. But it's like, this is where those kind of step back, reset conversations can really be helpful for people to start to trust them and to know, hey, if I have a thought or an idea, whether it's about me personally or about the work we do, or a question about the work we do, I've got a safe space where my boss is in listen mode, and I can just state it without feeling like I'm going to get judged, or, oh, that's a stupid question. Don't you know that's how we make money? No, it's like, it's really insightful when you let people say the things they're wondering without judgment.
That's the conversation we got to get going. Because, does the younger workforce kind of look at manufacturing and say, I'm worried about, and we just did this study, and I know that I have now data around this, but they are thinking, more around the safety, right? Like, is this a good place for me to work?
Mhm.
And the physical aspect.
Mhm.
But really with the technology, and here we are in 2026, like there's been such an involvement from the physical side, but there's been an escalation of the expectations of we don't hire part loaders. We are, and I had a maintenance tech tell me this, we hire operators.
Yes.
And the whole, in the interview, maybe, "Yeah, we really want your ideas." And then you get in there and your first 30 days is just like, just follow this process and I'm really busy. And that's why those, having that employee retention in those first 30 days, a lot of it is just having those development conversations. Like, hey, what questions do you have here? And one of the things that the research told us too is that people like mentors, right? Just for those, what are the different outlets that you can have where people can ask questions? Yeah, I
Yeah.
wonder, why do good people leave?
Right.
Maybe just not enough outlets to have that conversation.
Well, and feeling like I'm heard here, right? We all have a innate desire to feel like we belong, to feel like we're heard, to feel like we're part of something. And that doesn't, again, mean we have to pay attention or we have to do something with everybody's individual opinion or ideas. But learning as a leader how to hear what's not being said, right? And
Mhm.
we set somebody up in a hire that, oh, hey, we want your ideas and you're an operator, not an XYZ. And then we're like, just do XYZ and I don't want to hear about it. I'm too busy to, think about it. Or yeah, I want to hear those things. We'll get to it. And then it never happens. And this is also why I think from a leader perspective, the manufacturing leaders also have to be really stingy about what is important and what's not. Where should they
Mm,
drop some balls, which is another chapter in the book, because not everything weighs equally, but it
no.
feels often like it does. Sometimes, yep, we know that that's a problem and we're just going to live with it for the moment because, we know we'll look harder at the fix in January. Making conscious decisions about what you think, what you're going to do is so much
Mm,
better than having all these things that we're doing halfway, and then we miss on the opportunity to have great conversations with our people.
yeah, we like to fix what's in front of us.
Yeah.
And the problem is usually not on the surface. So it is. It's a good read, Darcy. You've done a great job on the book. And again, because I like it, because I can see it from just a team member standpoint of, I don't really want to leave this job and go through the whole process and the stress of quitting and going here. But it's like, it's just, this isn't the story that I want right now. So like how, do you have that organization that it's not always on the leader, right? It's
Right.
sometimes it's just on you,
Yeah.
the listener. Right now, you're driving your car, so maybe there's a question you can ask. Maybe you can ask for that conversation with your leader. Hey, when can we have some good listening time? Like we can just do this. I have some ideas. I want to get some ideas here, and keeping your best people. It's about having those deeper
Even
conversations.
right, even getting very clear about there are things within my control. Like, maybe there are choices I'm making. I'm assuming it has to be this way, but this is the
Mhm.
way that's not working for me. For example, if it's flexibility or if it's, sharing my ideas or my possibility of growth. And I think often we get dissatisfied and we think the only option is to leave or retire or drop out. And we just don't do the work of what do I really want? Like, am I really
Mhm.
clear on that first? And then if I'm clear on what I want, what are how can I change what I think, say, or do to get more of what I want? Like, we can do a lot of things. We can fix a lot of relationships without anybody else being involved, just by us
Mm.
doing the work.
I'm gonna leave on this, and you had this other aspect which I see in manufacturing a lot, and it's like, and I know the listener, you may not want to hear this right now. You might be driving to the plant, but we're gonna ask you to rewrite your story, right? Because we come up with the stories of, it's just, well, people don't listen to my ideas, and this place is never going to change. But how could we rewrite that? So, but Darcy, leave the listeners with like, how do they rewrite their story?
Yeah. I think the first thing when you hear that negative chatter in your brain, it's to say, what if I'm wrong?
Hmm.
How do I know for sure? What assumptions am I making? And I've asked people to try on the opposite.
Mm.
What if everyone wants to hear from me? What if people actually want a conversation? And then you do experiments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, folks, for the next 2 months, I'm going to try an experiment. We're going to have these conversations set aside, and then we'll see if those are helpful to you to me doesn't commit you to change in behavior, but it gives you the chance to sample it without
Mhm.
losing face. If it's like, yeah, no, I was right. They're not listening. Or yeah, actually, I'm not saying anything that they want to hear.
Yeah, sometimes you're going to learn that it is the truth, right? And this isn't the right avenue. But I know that I've gone to so many manufacturing plants, and like, oh, yeah, people are really rough there. And then it's like I can find good people in every plant I go to. Like there's someone right now that's going to engage with you, listen to that story, and like I like what you said, just try and experiment. I love it. So Darcy, I got a book report on my website from your book, and we'll lead the listeners there. There's a link there to purchase it. I really got a lot out of it. I think it's a good fit for manufacturing. For those busy manufacturing leaders, how do they best follow you and kind of keep up with maybe what you're researching on this?
Yeah, I have what I call my insider email. It's once a week. It's a short story that is at Red Cape Revolution /insider. I think we'll have a link in the show notes. And then just redcaperevolution.com is all of my work and how to work with me and other things that are going on. So I welcome people checking in there.
Right on. Well, thank you for your help, because we met at the author salon with Page Two in Toronto. You're in Florida. And are you coming again in October?
I am. I will see you in person, which will be exciting. You and many other authors.
It's cool that some Americans are coming to Canada, and we kind of work together, and all these, just trying to help these listeners.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, thanks for what you do. Thanks for what you've taught me, and your contribution to manufacturing. And I hope that we can all kind of find our current role and find a new, renewed, better path in the place that you already are. So thank you so much, Darcy. Thanks for spending time with us today. Here's one action I would do this week. Pick one person on your team and book a separate time with them. Not rush between meetings, not on the floor, a coffee, a lunch, before shift, a scheduled time. Tell them up front you're in listen mode, and nothing has to come out of it other than just not making the conversation about you're fine, I'm fine. And if you haven't grabbed it yet, get those 10 questions at manufacturinggreatness.com/subscribe. That's also where the bonus content comes from, including the exclusive research we're releasing. See you next week. Stay curious.
Thank you, Trevor. Appreciate it.